So my name is Dylan Mack. I am one of the interns from Iowa State. I'm a rising sophomore at Washington University in St. Louis. I'm studying systems engineering. Joe, do you want to introduce yourself since you're here?
Yeah, sure. My name is Joe Zemmels. I am a PhD student at Iowa State University in the statistics department, and I was the graduate fellow on this project.
Awesome. So our project worked with the Iowa Department of Human Rights to investigate workforce and economic development in the state of Iowa. So here's our team. Avery, Zach, and I are the interns, and then Chris and Bailey are faculty leads. Joe is our graduate fellow, as he mentioned, and then Liesel and Sandy are both Iowa State affiliates who were faculty advisors for us on this project. Okay, so an overview of our project. Our sort of mission from the Department of Human Rights was to empower underrepresented Iowans through advocating for the elimination of economic, social, and cultural barriers to full participation in civic life. One little anecdote we got from one of our partners was to try to tell them something they didn't know. So that was, I think, something we all took to heart and gave us sort of a sense of purpose. So we worked to analyze data concerning employment and earning opportunities that disproportionately for disproportionately impacted communities in Iowa. And we summarized these findings in a series of posters that we will show you in a little bit here that are called Just the Facts. Another dimension to this project that sort of bridged the gap of a sibling project on educational attainment was the state of language in Iowa. So we'll see some maps that show a lot of that information as well. So this is the first poster. This is about employment characteristics of Iowans with disabilities. So there's a lot of information, as you can see on this poster. On the left, these are the definitions from the census. We used what's called ACS data, and they have very particular ways of defining and categorizing different kinds of disabilities. So you can see what those definitions are and how many Iowans there are that fall into those categories. And the major finding from this poster, this side of the poster, is that Iowans with disabilities have generally lower rates of participation in the workforce than Iowans without disabilities. And in particular, and we can see in the graph on the upper right-hand corner how that varies by the type of disability. And then a piece of information that we wanted to pair with that was what kind of industries individuals with disabilities are involved in. So you can see here faceted by disability type, the top 10 industries ranked by overall number of employees with disabilities. And the finding here is that or a purpose or a way that this information could be applied is to, if the goal was to apply some sort of intervention or encourage workforce or enable workforce participation, this could tell you where some of those programs might be most effective. Another topic of our poster was to look at one of our populations that we were interested in was immigrants and people who are coming into the state of Iowa. So this poster looks at why and to what industries immigrants are coming into in the state of Iowa. So you can see by far the largest industry for immigrant workers within Iowa in the last year is related to education. So colleges, universities, and professional schools. And then you can see that of the recent immigrants working in animal production and agriculture, 96.3 identify as Hispanic or Latino. So that is by far the largest industry by percent race or ethnicity. Then the backside of this poster shows some similar information to the disability poster. So we can see the top 5 industries by their percent share of all workers in a particular racial group. So you can see how some of the industry variation is not monolithic in any way. It varies pretty greatly by racial category. So you can see within American Indian, and I believe this group includes Alaskan Native as well. Construction is the highest. For others, it's animal slaughtering and processing. For others still, it's education, construction, food, service, and restaurants. So the next poster, another part of work that we felt the broad category of work that was important to consider was commuting. Particularly, this was a poster that I worked on that I'm very interested in because commuting is such a big, even though it's not necessarily a part of work itself, access to adequate transportation can be a very significant barrier to full participation in the workplace. So this poster has some information. We can see the on the left side, the distribution by race of how much time people are spending commuting to work. So we can see that white Iowans within the state of Iowa, the white population has the largest proportion of workers who spend 0 to 9 minutes commuting. So that's a very small band of time, as opposed to other groups, which, as you can see, for example, many more American Indian or Alaska Native Iowans have the smallest proportion that are commuting within that very short window. We can see as well that white Iowans have the greatest percent of the workforce that's driving alone to work, whereas some groups have a much lower share. Only 70.7% of Asian Iowans drive alone to work. And then this is interesting information to pair with also the percent of households that don't have access to a car. So we can see that in the state of Iowa, well over a majority of every racial group drives alone to work, but then a very significant portion of some racial groups within the state don't have access to a car. So that gap could represent a very significant barrier to participating fully in the workforce. Then we were interested in some of the same information by disability status. So we can see here, again, it's the same time distribution faceted by disability type. So we see that on average, typically a greater share of individuals with disabilities spend 0 to 9 minutes commuting to work than individuals without disabilities. This is particularly true for the individuals with self-care difficulties. So we can see in that particular box, 43% spend 0 to 9 minutes commuting to work, which is much higher than the average. Interestingly, people with vision difficulties are actually the only group that has a smaller percent of individuals than individuals with no disabilities who spend 0 to 9 minutes commuting to work, although the difference is pretty negligible, 0.2%. So this next poster examines unemployment and employment, depending how you look at it, across age, sex, and race or ethnicity. So these plots I think are particularly interesting because the data is very recent. And you can see the impact that COVID-19 has had in these posters. So the posters on the bottom zoom in on that little window that's highlighted in gray. So for example, we see that by sex, typically over a very long period of time, males have had much higher rates of unemployment insurance claims than females. But then during COVID, that trend for a while, particularly when it spiked, flipped, and there is a higher rate of females claiming unemployment insurance than males. And then for the age group, we don't see the same flip. The trends they change a little bit, but not significantly. But there is a very large spike. And we see this for racial groups as well. And then this poster shows some various information on self-employment on the right. So we can see the rate on the top map of self-employment by sex, females on the top and then males on the bottom. So we can see that there's a much higher rate of male self-employment than female self-employment generally across the state, but that disparity is smaller in the center of the state. And then on the left side, we see information on the occupation held by individuals of varying races and ethnicities, as well as sex on the bottom. One of the takeaways from the poster was that African Americans hold manager positions at a not at the same rate as other groups, and as well as Asian Iowans work in computer and mathematical occupations more than other races and ethnicities. So now in the last few minutes here, we're just going to take a peek at our website for the project. So here, we're running a little late on time, so I'm going to try to be fast. But this website has additional information. So for each poster, we'll just navigate to one. We can take a look at the code that was actually used to process the data, to compute numbers of interest and visualize. And then there's just a little bit of text explaining what our thought process was, maybe where we got the data or any important constraints. For example, some of the data I worked with required certain filters when I was downloading it. So I made note of that for the sake of reproducibility. Great. And then we have the last piece of information here is our language map, which was produced by Zach. And here we can see by various geographic breakdowns, the percent of population speaking a particular language. So this is actually interactive. You can pick your language of interest. So I believe in Iowa, Spanish is the most prevalent non-English language. So if we look at Spanish, you can see the percent of the population. And that is true for these first four categories. It's percent of population. One of the geographic breakdowns we also have is school district. So in this case, this is not of the total population, it's of the student population within the school district. So I know I kind of blazed through that last part. I think we have 2 minutes here. So if anybody has any questions or things that you'd like more information on, please feel free to hop in.